Hi, hey Russ here. Welcome back to my shop. Today I want to talk about my Incra Jig and how I use it to cut dados and grooves in all my wood. Because you're always having to do that, either whether you're putting backs on the back of cabinets or jewelry boxes or bottoms in jewelry boxes. So you're always cutting these dados. And so I showed you on my table saw setup. I actually have two table saws. This is my original one. It was a contractor saw, and I did a video on this setup last year sometime. But basically, I keep a 1/4-inch dado in this table saw at all times, and so this sled works with this 1/4-inch, and I never change it out. But I can cut any size dado I want by using my Incra Jig. It makes it quick and easy. Let me show you how this works, and you'll see how you can use your Incra Jig to do any size dado, and you don't have to change that blade out all the time. So this is actually works much better in the long run to me. So let's say, for example, I have a couple of pieces of wood. I have this piece of wood here, and I want to cut a dado for this thing to fit into exactly. So what I do is, first thing you do is you just take and you have to measure. Hi, Annie. Go on. Go lay down. Go on. She's trying to be a star. So when I measure this, this is exactly 11/16 of an inch thick. So we need to know what our magic number is, and so that we can cut this dado using my 1/4-inch dado set. So we have a 1/4-inch here, 11/16 here. You subtract the 1/4-inch from this, it makes my magic number 7/16. That is our magic number. So to get the exact dado, that's what we're going to be moving our Incra Jig back and forth on that increment. So you take your piece that you want to cut. Make sure my height is set. And we're going to put a dado. Let's use this one. It's a little neater. And let's say we want to put a dado in this thing. And let's just put it right here. And we're going to put it on this side of our mark. So we're going to line this mark up to the left-hand side of our blade. And then I set my Incra Jig up, and I pick a number to be what I call my 0 point. For example, let's set this on number 2. And I snug it down, and I bring this up here. Now I bring my fence over to sandwich my Incra Jig in between. And then I take and align this up using my micro adjuster. And then I can lock my fence down. And this sets my left side of my dado. So now I can set this up, take my jig out, and cut my dado. Now we want to get it to the correct width. My magic number is 7/16, yes. So we change this and move it over 7/16 of an inch, which is easy to do with the Incra Jig. Now that this is reset, I can put this back in between here, push my board up against it and the fence, take that out of the way, hog out in between. And now, whoops. I have a nice fitting 3/4 inch. All right. 11/16 of an inch dado. And I didn't have to change my dado stack out to do that. So the Incra Jig can help you get that adjustment on your dado size by using it. And using this in the same way as a spacer between your fence and as you're doing your cut, you can increment this jig and never move your fence, so that way you're getting accurate increments as you're moving back and forth. You can use this same setup like this and set up and use it to do finger joints. And I could do a board in here with finger joints using this same jig, and then incrementing it out, knowing that I'm a 1/4 inch here. If I wanted to do 3/8 box joints, I could still do it with the Incra Jig and my 1/4 inch stack without any problem. I move it a 1/4 inch, then I move it an 1/8, move it a 1/4 inch, and then an 1/8. I could even take on this jig and put a white piece of tape in here. Is what I do. It's duct tape. And if I wanted to make my own template to do that 1/4 inch, 1/8 inch movement type of thing, I could set it up on the scale, mark it, move my scale until I get done all the way from one end to the other, and then I have a template to do that pattern. And I can just keep that as a template then to do 3/8 finger joints. So the Incra Jig will help you with your dado stack. But you don't have to change your dado stack out when you're using the Incra Jig. You can make any size dado that you want. Again, just to prove it, this is on a 32nd of an inch increment. To measure my piece of wood, if I measure this one, I'm using actually my fractional dial caliper. And the reason I do that is that it kind of stays in sync with my 32nd of an inch increment on the Incra system. And so, but if I measure this one now instead, this piece of plywood, let's do this one a little cleaner. I am actually a 1/2 inch plus 1/64 of an inch wide. So I call that a 1/2 inch plus 1 click. 3 clicks in between each 1/16 of an inch. So knowing that, that means that actually this only increments to the 32nd of an inch, but that's a 1/64 of an inch in there. So what I would do with here is to set up my magic number is my magic number would be the 1/4 inch from the 1/2 inch increment to give me a 1/4 inch plus my 1/64 inch increment. So it's a 1/4 inch plus a 1/64 is my magic number. Well, to get my 1/64, I have some sticky notepad paper here. There's 3 of them, and this is not by coincidence. This is exactly 1/64 of an inch. So if I have to increment a 1/64 of an inch, I set this to the closest 32nd, and then I just set this in between there too, and that gives me a 1/64 of an inch spacer to get a 1/64 of an inch increment. So I don't have any finger joint jig or any kind of fancy jigs on my sled. 99 times out of 100, I can just grab this one and use it right here on there. I don't even have a hold down for it. Most of the time, I just set it up to where it uses my fence as a backstop for this, so I can set this up anywhere I really want, and then I move it out of the way when I do the actual cut, as you saw the way I did that. So it's pretty easy to set up no matter what you're doing, and no matter what size dado you're cutting. All you really need is just a basic fence and the jig. The other thing I might mention about this is they also have the Incra gauge, which is more for setting heights and stuff, and I show you how to do layouts with this thing. You can actually do this same thing. Instead of using this jig, you can do this and set this in between, and use this to set your 0 and your magic number, and go back and forth. This one's a little harder to read and to set it exactly on the 32nd of an inch. This is a little harder to work with than this, so that's why I tend to use my jig instead of this when I'm doing this type of work, so that I can move it back and forth, that's all. But either one will work just as accurate as the other. So, and by changing the number of pieces of paper at the back for your additional spacer, you can actually set this up pretty accurately down to the thickness of one of these papers, which is what, 1/3 of a 1/64 of an inch, whatever that is. Who knows? So, but that's how it works. That's the Incra saw in a nutshell. I hope you understood everything here. If you didn't, if you had to watch this more than once, don't be surprised. There's a lot here to comprehend, but once you've used the jig this way a couple of times, you'll actually find it's a very easy way to set up to do any kind of multiple width type cuts on your boards, and you don't have to change out your blade in order to do that. I could also, if my dado, if I'm cutting the groove in something that's less than 1/4 of an inch, This blade over here actually I use a 1/16 of an inch thick blade. It's a 7 1/4 blade. And I can do the same thing using this in my sled that fits on here. I can use that setup and use my jig, and I can make my dados even smaller than a 1/4 of an inch then. I can go down to as small as a 1/16 of an inch. And so you can get pretty detailed as to what size groove or dado you want to put in something without any problem by using your table saw and your simple jig setup. So anyway, the jig is something that you really should have in every workshop. It's such a handy little tool, and that's what it is. It's the tool. And it's amazing how many shops I talk to people out there that don't use the Incra Jig. So if you don't have one, you might want to start looking for one, because I'm going to show you some other good things you can do with that you're going to find out around the shop. It's not just at the table saw either. So it is a handy jig to have. I hope you learned something here today about how to use it. If you don't have one, I hope you will. Sooner or later, you'll learn to use it and you'll love it. It is actually very handy. So, but you have to think outside the box to use it. So anyway, if you have any questions about this, please leave them below. Any comments, I'd love to read them. Make sure that you hit the like button. Most importantly, though, come back again, because we're nowhere near done. We'll see you again very soon. Thanks.